So this week was the big NXT 2.0 Reboot. And Nick Khan was not kidding when he said that they were rebooting this. Gone is the dark look with lots of skulls and metal music and Poppy, probably no more Poppy. Poor Triple H. He must be devastated. Yeah, he was not present at the show. Shawn Michaels was said to be calling the plays backstage. The only update on Triple H per the Observer is that he is at home, he is taking phone calls, but he is not doing a whole lot else. Talent has been told they could call him if they want to wish him well after his heart procedure, but they are not to talk any WWE business with him. I can imagine everything going on is very stressful for him. I can see why they would not want that to upset him. But now the show is all bright and colorful and what they basically have done here is they have knocked it back about 10 years to the FCW days. This is very much now a developmental show. What this is NXT Dark Elevation. That's what the show is now. And that isn't totally a bad thing because one of the casualties of the pandemic were the NXT live event loops that they would usually do around the Florida area. They haven't run any shows at all in a year and a half. Those were the shows where a lot of these unknown names and these green guys and girls, they would be able to go out and work in front of an actual crowd, even if that crowd was only 150 people. They would be able to go out there in front of people and they would work and they would learn and they would improve, hopefully. Since the pandemic started, all they've been doing is signing these people and collecting them like trophies and sticking them in the performance center to train. You can only train so much without working actual matches in front of live crowds. But as a consequence of this, it looks like we're going to end up with a lot of really inexperienced people working matches on television. So gone are the days where they would be building to a big takeover show based around great in-ring matches with indie workers that they signed to something now more akin to what NXT was originally intended to be. I don't know that that's what USA Network believed that they were getting when they paid for the show, but that's their problem. USA Network is responsible for 3-hour Raws. Fuck USA Network. But they're taking the show back to its roots. If we, of course, ignore the game show phase of NXT, we'll just pretend that didn't happen. Back when it used to air on Sci-Fi. I'm going to keep an open mind about this. This was only the first episode. It's week 1. It was all over the place. There was some good, there was some bad. But first, Samoa Joe surrendered his NXT championship in a shocking announcement last Sunday. These things always seem to happen right after the podcast drops. It was later that night, after the podcast had already dropped, that Samoa Joe put a video out on his social media. He looked like he was sitting in his room at his house, announcing that WWE Medical had sidelined him. And he did not explain why. He didn't give any kind of details. And that all he said is he is no longer the NXT champion. Now, it may well be a legitimate medical issue, but color me skeptical, given the timing of the announcement, coming 48 hours before the big relaunch, with a number 1 contenders match that was conveniently turned into a title match. Joe has not wrestled a match since his takeover win over Karrion Kross. So unless he was hurt in that match and they decided to strip him because he's still not cleared, which is always possible, yes, I do believe there is good reason to why. It does not make you a bad person if you're wondering, the timing is a little suspicious. It worked to their advantage, being able to promote that a new champion would be crowned. And look, if it is an injury or if it's an illness, this man just has the worst luck. I mean, if he didn't have bad luck, he wouldn't have any luck at all. So here's hoping he gets back quickly. Even though Samoa Joe would not seem to really fit what they're looking for in this new NXT, I don't look at Samoa Joe and think he's bright and colorful. I don't see that. I think we may have seen the last of Samoa Joe as the NXT champion. I don't believe Samoa Joe is going to become the first ever 4-time NXT champion. Johnny Gargano, he was also in the news in a Fightful Select report about his NXT contract coming due. It is expiring on December 3rd. WWE sources told Fightful that the two sides have not yet entered into negotiations on a new deal, but they are expected to sometime in the fall. Well, I would think so, given that his contract is up in the fall. When else are they going to engage into conversations and negotiations? Gee golly, yeah, well, in the fall they're going to talk. Well, I sure hope so. Boy, looking at that calendar, I assume it's going to be the fall. Gargano has been with NXT now for 6 years. He has been the NXT champion. He has been the North American champion. He has been an NXT tag team champion. But I cannot imagine him leaving, even though he has done all of these different things over such a long period of time on this show. I cannot imagine him leaving. Plus, his wife works there. I don't think her deal is up until later next year, supposedly. I think when the dust settles on this one, Johnny Wrestling is going to be staying put right where he is. And I think he should. I think it's the right place for him to be. So it's definitely a lot brighter with all the rainbow colors. It looks like a Lucky Charms factory explosion in that place. But I think the improved lighting looks good. I like the little, the little arena they made for themselves there. They finally did away with all the plexiglass barriers, which was a huge plus. And I like that they can fit more people in there now. I still don't think it's as many as they had in Full Sail. That they can get 400 or 500 people in there. I don't think they can fit that many, but it's more than what they had before. Apparently there is an edict that it is no longer to be referred to as the Capital Wrestling Center. It is no longer the CWC. The COVID Coliseum, I guess, is no more. It is now simply the home of NXT. Boy, that word wrestling must really be allergic to that word wrestling, even though it's in the name of the company. They don't like that word. We had quite a few second-generation names getting their moment of glory on this show, starting with Bron Breakker. Bron is short for Bronson, which is his real name, the son of Rick Steiner, who had just been given the name Rex Steiner, R-E-X, which was actually a really cool name. And then he is given a shitty name, so they could trademark it. He even had Steiner written on his boots. So I guarantee you this is something they threw at him a few hours before the show started. The day of. Bad name aside, they obviously see a huge upside with him because from the moment that the show started, he interrupted an LA Knight promo in the back and he got a match with him. And then he beat him. He pinned LA Knight, the same LA Knight who was he was one of the 4 men challenging in the main event for the NXT Championship on this very show. So there's a lot to unwrap here. They made no mention of the fact that he is the son of Rick Steiner. Vic Joseph at one point made a dog-faced gremlin reference that was about as close as they came to making any kind of Steiner reference. But he sounds exactly like a cross between his dad and his uncle. I mean, it is eerie. I would say leaning more towards Scott. If you close your eyes and you just listen to him speak, you would swear it was Scott Steiner. But then at the end of the show, he confronted the new NXT champion in the back, and that's how they went off the air. So they started with Breakker and they ended with Breakker. We didn't really see enough of him in the ring, I think, to fully judge, but he looked good for the time he was in there. He's already got the pedigree. They clearly, I don't mean the move. They clearly have high hopes for this guy. I'll say guy. I don't even know how old he is. I say kid. They clearly have high hopes for him. And he's going to be in line for a big push. And if you want to make a new star on their first night, you know what? A win over one of the contenders for the championship is one way to do it. It sort of reminded me of what they did with him of John Cena's first night on SmackDown, how he confronted Kurt Angle about ruthless aggression. Right? Here he confronted LA Knight in the back. John Cena lost in his match, but Breakker won his. But like with Cena, when it was over in the back, he had a bunch of people coming up to him, offering him congratulations. shaking his hand, giving him hugs. Whether he can have himself the kind of career that John Cena had is a very different story, but they need to create new stars. They have to create new stars. The question is, how different is this NXT going to be as compared to, what we have traditionally had? Are they going to treat these guys like their own little pet projects and treat them better when they eventually move up to Raw or SmackDown? Or are they going to be victims of the same inept booking that has befallen a lot of other names that we have seen called up in years past from NXT? That is the million-dollar question. Maybe they could bring Ted DiBiase back and give us the answer. But that is the million-dollar question, for which we have no answer. I think I know what that answer is going to be, but we don't know yet. If Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard are going to be more hands-off with this version of NXT, or not hands-off, I'm sorry, hands-on, does that bode well for someone like Braun Breaker, because they see him as one of their little pet projects? If they're more hands-on and this guy's getting a big push, does that mean good things for him in the future? Does that bode well for his future? If he's their project, he's Vince and Bruce's project, more so than Paul Levesque. That is the question. Brooks Jensen. He was another second-generation name featured on this show. He was tagging with Josh Briggs in a losing effort against Marcel Bartel and Fabian Eichner of Imperium. Jensen and Briggs are going to be a tag team, it looks like, going forward. They've now put the two of them together. Jensen is the son of former WWE star Bull Buchanan. Remember Bull being on TV with Big Boss Man? I used to chant bullshit Buchanan when he would come out. But he is the son of Bull Buchanan. He was only first signed a month ago, and already he's on TV. Again, NXT Dark Elevation. That is what this show is now, with a few bigger names mixed in. And then we had Von Wagner. Holy shit. And I thought Braun Breaker was the worst name on this show. He looks more like Van Hammer than Von Wagner. This fucking guy, right down to the name, looked like something out of a Create a Wrestler mode from one of the 2K games. He is Cal Bloom, the son of Wayne Bloom, who at one point was one of the Beverly Brothers in WWE. He actually wrestled a match on SmackDown last year as Cal Bloom, as himself, against Sheamus. This was during the early days of the Empty Arena pandemic shows, and there was a report at that time, in April of 2020, I want to give them credit for this because they reported at that time, this was Paul Davis of WrestlingNews.co, who said that he had heard from people in WWE that had seen Bloom's training at the PC, who said that he could be a main event star for them within a few years. The source said everybody is comparing him to a young Edge. Okay, so that was April of last year. Some pretty high praise there. Fast forward to this show, and Kyle O'Reilly is attacked in the back by Pete Dunne and Ridge Holland. That took him out of the Fatal 4-Way to crown a new NXT champion. So in his place, William Regal puts Von Wagner in the Fatal 4-Way, even though he has never wrestled a single match on NXT before. Because apparently he was, I guess, in the back, singing or directing his own orchestra with a fucking name like that. We have never seen Von Wagner before. At least not under that name. On NXT television. Never wrestled a single match on NXT before. He was the person, though, to show up and run off Pete Dunne and Ridge Holland. And so, therefore, he now finds himself in a championship match. There is no way to justify this. William Regal looked like a fucking idiot with this decision. And I don't care what kind of potential they think the kid has. He has no business being part of an NXT championship match. Carmelo Hayes had to go win a tournament for the right to challenge for the championship of his choosing. Von Wagner heard a commotion in the other room and went to go see what was going on, and he's gifted an opportunity to become the NXT champion. We got to see B-Fab make her in-ring debut against Katrina Cortez, who once upon a time was called up to Monday Night Raw to team with Sin Cara against Andrade and Zelina Vega, and then was promptly demoted right back to the PC. B-Fab looked a little rough in there. It also did not go more than 90 seconds, but what little we got was not good. Character-wise, though, I love her. I think she's great. Still loving the whole Hit Row thing. Thankfully, they haven't abandoned the Hit Row Legado del Fantasma program. They're keeping that going. Elektra Lopez walked out with Legado after the match, and they teased a match between B-Fab and Elektra. But she was held back by Santos Escobar, so we'll have to wait for that match, I guess, for another day. Carmelo Hayes is a heel now, and he's got a new friend with him named Trick Williams. You know, with some of the goofy-ass names they give these people, and it's almost October, I'm surprised that his middle name wasn't Orr and his last name wasn't Treat. But Trick Williams is his name. He brought him in to help watch his back, since Hayes said, ever since I won this contract for a title match, I've got a target on me. And Trick told him that he was being too humble, he has to have a harder edge to him, and then he started cutting a promo like he was Enzo Amore. Only not nearly as good as Enzo was. They were leaving. Duke Hudson was on his way to the ring for a match. He blew right past them. Trick Williams, this offended him greatly. He says, see? He goes, no more of this. He's like Phil Leotardo from The Sopranos. No more, Butchie. No more. And he goes into the ring and he attacks Hudson. This didn't look great. Hayes then joined into the beatdown. It looked a little bit better at that point. But I guess that completed what is supposed to be a heel turn. Hudson was already a heel. So I'm not sure if this was a heel turn or they're just trying to give him a little bit more of an attitude. It felt like a heel turn to me. Carmelo Hayes is somebody who does come from the indies, and I picked him to win the breakout tournament, so when he won, I was very happy. I think the potential for him is sky high. And I would like to see him be one of the new featured faces of this new NXT relaunch. So I think giving him more of an attitude instead of having him act all humble, oh, I'm just happy to be here. Giving him an attitude and a harder edge and say, yeah, you know what? Not only am I happy to be here, I'm better than all these other people. I'm the best thing you guys got. That's good. I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see more of that attitude. Then we had a WWE main roster specialty, which is not good. We had a women's tag team match with Kaden Carter and Casey Catanzaro against Gigi Dolan and JC Jane that ended quickly by DQ when Mandy Rose ran in. Then Saray ran in to aid the baby faces. And when they came back from break, we were in the middle of a trios match. The same tired formula we see on Raw and on SmackDown has now infected NXT. You can tell who is overseeing the show this week just based on the booking, or at least who the show is being written for. Mandy has gone from blonde to brunette. When she ran in, she was wearing a hood over her head, like she was bald, or hideously disfigured. And then she comes out and she pulls the hood off, and the big reveal is that she gave herself a dye job. The hood was a bit much. But it looks good on her. She wears it well. Mandy got the win for her team, which now has a name. They are calling themselves Toxic Attraction. I almost said Toxic Avengers. They should call themselves that. The way she was wearing that hood, I thought she was going to unmask and look like the Toxic Avenger. Toxic Attraction is their name. But now that I've said it out loud, I actually prefer Toxic Avengers. So it looks like they're going to be NXT's answer to the beautiful people. Toxic Attraction. It's what an odd choice, though, for a word to describe yourself. Toxic. I do have to say, I really like their music. Ever since Gigi Dolan got new music and started making regular appearances on NXT, and now I assume it's going to be the music for the whole group, it's a good tune. I like it. Somebody will have to let me know when the WWE Music YouTube channel puts it up. We had a vignette straight out of WWF in 1995 for a newcomer coming soon to NXT named Tony D'Angelo, who spoke with a thick Italian accent and was walking down the street, talking about how his family's in the waste management business and various other industries. Gee, I wonder where they got that from. Where's the gabagool? Who ate all the gabagool? So his family, I guess the story is that his family, they didn't use this word, but his family is all mobbed up. That's what they implied. He used to be an amateur wrestler who realized that there's no money in amateur wrestling, which is undoubtedly true. The real money, he said, is in NXT. And he said this with a straight face. Once he said that, he lost all credibility in my book. The only thing this established is that he is not very bright if he thinks that the real money is in NXT. Please say like the real money is in WWE, and I'm going to start here in NXT, cracking heads. Then I would have been okay with it. The minute he said the real money is in NXT, I almost laughed about as hard as I did at Diamond Dallas Page dating Ronnie Radke. I think that Mr. D'Angelo over here would do better off staying in the family business and collecting all of that protection money from the local vendors, if that's the case. We had the Creed brothers. I'm a fan of these two. I said that a few weeks ago. I'm a fan of these two guys. They won another tag team squash. They have breathed new life into Diamond Mine, and Malcolm Bivens introduced us to the newest addition to Diamond Mine. Their first female addition, Ivy Nile. The star of NBC's Titan Games, we were told. I'll take their word for it because I don't watch NBC's Titan Games. In fact, I can't think of anything I watch on NBC. I started watching Young Rock and then I just got pulled into other things and I never went back to watch it. But I heard it's a really good show. I'll have to catch up with it at some point. I've only seen the first episode. Actually, that's not true. I watch Law and Order SVU and Organized Crime. What am I talking about? So that's what I watch on NBC. And I watch Shark Tank on ABC, and I think that's about it as far as non-wrestling shows on the major broadcast channels are concerned. But anyway, Kushida made his return, and Bivens challenged, he just walked out with the Cruiserweight Championship, and Bivens challenged him to put the title on the line this Tuesday against Roderick Strong. That has to be a title change. Gotta be. They're starting to really heat up Diamond Mine now. It would be foolish to have Strong lose to Kushida. So the Fatal 4-Way was up next. Tommaso Ciampa, Pete Dunne, LA Knight, and Kyle O'Reilly. That was originally going to be the lineup in this number one contenders match. And it ended up turning into a Fatal 4-Way with Tommaso Ciampa, Pete Dunne, LA Knight, who already lost at the beginning of the show, and Von Wagner to crown a brand new NXT champion. This went less than 10 minutes. I thought it was okay. It was good as a television main event, nothing more, with a surprise finish. I thought for sure that it was going to be LA Knight or Pete Dunne going over here. Pete Dunne was the favorite after the news broke that he signed a new deal to stay in WWE. Maybe it was the plan before Joe vacated the belt and it became a championship match. Maybe if it was still a number one contenders match, Pete Dunne would have gotten the win. But Goldie is home again. After more than 900 days, Tommaso Ciampa is once again the NXT champion. He has been phased down for so long, doing the tag team thing with Timothy Thatcher, and now he is the champion. The idea that they would have put the belt on Von Wagner is laughable, even if they do see him as a future main eventer. It's like Chris Jericho becoming the first AEW champion over Hangman Page. Chris Jericho was the right choice at the right time. Hangman Page was not ready for that spot. Now he is, but at the time he wasn't. 2 years from now, maybe Von Wagner, preferably with a better name, will be in a position to challenge and win the NXT championship, but today is not that day. You put the title on the established veteran, and then you could always have him drop it to one of the young guys, if that's what they choose to do. LA Knight took the losing fall to Ciampa, meaning he got pinned twice on one show. I take that to mean that he's on his way to Raw or SmackDown in the draft. Even though NXT may not officially be part of the draft, he has to wind up on one of those two shows. That is where he needs to be. He does not need to be toiling away on the developmental show doing jobs for all of these people. I think he's entertaining. I think his ring work is fine, But personality-wise, promo-wise, he's a Raw guy or a SmackDown guy. There's no reason anymore for him to be on NXT. I enjoyed the storyline with the $1 Million title and Cameron Grimes and Ted DiBiase. And in the end, the babyface, they got the win. It all paid off in the end. He's clearly not going to be the NXT champion. Get him off this show. Move him up to something else. I was going to say move him up to bigger and better, but I caught myself there. You never know what you're going to get on Raw or SmackDown, but that really is where he belongs. They closed the show with the wedding of Dexter Lumis and Indy Hartwell, and the wedding was the best part of, I think, not only the best part of the show, but one of the better wrestling weddings that they have ever done. I mean, it was no Billy and Chuck wedding, but I thought it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun watching this. Earlier in the show, Austin Theory returned. We have not seen him on TV in many, many weeks. He's been doing dark matches before Raw and SmackDown. He's another one who I'm sure is main roster bound, possibly in the draft. He'll pop up on one of those two shows. And he brought a guest with him. He brought Damian Priest back to NXT. Damian Priest showed up, and they had to explain to him that Damian is not a real priest. Austin Theory couldn't understand what they were saying. Damian Priest seemed more interested in the open bar. You'll notice he did not come out for the actual wedding. He really was just there for the free booze. They had various members of the NXT roster in the ring to attend the ceremony. They took the ring ropes down. We learned that Dexter Lumis's middle name is Gaylord, which I'm sure was written to get a good laugh out of Vince McMahon. Laugh! Johnny Gargano, he asked Austin Theory at one point if he had the rings, and Theory said, well, we're in a ring, silly. So he didn't have the rings, but Ika Minjiro did. He stood up and he opened his sport coat. He's the one who wears the jacket in the ring when he wrestles. He opened his sport coat, and there were the rings. And when the priest asked if anybody objects to these two being married, speak now or forever hold your peace, everybody hesitantly raised their hand. At which point Dexter Lumis opened his jacket up and flashed a hatchet. And they all slowly put their hands down. And then Indy read her vows. When it was time for Dexter to do the same, he simply gave a thumbs up gesture like he was Orange Cassidy. The priest couldn't believe it. He said, you don't have anything to say to this lovely bride? So Lumis put the priest in a chokehold. He choked him unconscious. Who among us has not wanted to do that? Everybody then started a Regal chant. William Regal was sitting at ringside. They wanted him to stand up and officiate the ceremony. Regal had the best mortified expression on his face that I have seen in a very long time. It's William Regal. His facial expressions are legendary. He could tell a story without saying a word. He didn't want to have any part of this. So finally, Beth Phoenix stepped in to officiate. She says she just got ordained as a minister on the internet last night. Indy says, I do, and then all eyes turn to Dexter Lumis. And what did I tell you months ago? What did I say on this podcast? This is going to pay off with Dexter Lumis speaking his first words. And sure enough, he says, I, and everybody leans in. They don't know what he's going to say next. And he says, do. And everybody pops huge, including Austin Theory, who had the cheesiest over-the-top reaction to this. It was awesome. Husband and wife, they share a kiss, which really was more Indy doing the kissing, and Lumis just kind of stood there and absorbed it. He absorbed the kiss. A rare happy ending to a wrestling wedding, at least until we find out that Indy has been boning Austin Theory, which gives Vince McMahon that incest storyline he's always wanted. Even though it's not technically incest because they're not really related, but they're sort of treated like brother and sister in this storyline, so that's good enough for the old man. That's about as good as it might get for him. The show closed with Bron Breakker approaching Tommaso Ciampa backstage. As Ciampa was watching the wedding, he was shaking Tommaso's hand out of respect. Congratulations on becoming the champion. And then there was a lot of staring at each other, and Braun was staring at the belt. There was a lot of staring. There was a lot of heavy breathing. The new NXT is a work in progress. I like the idea of showcasing some new faces that they think have the potential to become big names, but they should not fill the majority of the show with developmental acts. I almost feel like they put too many of them on this show. I think you need a good balance between developmental names that aren't ready yet and more experienced vets. Otherwise, you're just not going to have a very appealing television show. But as with everything, the success or the failure of NXT 2.0 or 3.0 or 4.0 or 5.0 is not going to be decided on Tuesdays. It is going to be determined by what they do with those talents when they eventually start working Mondays and Fridays. That has not changed. And no matter how much I might think Braun Breaker has the potential to be something special or a WrestleMania headliner one day or Von Wagner or how much I really like Hit Row, it won't matter if they get called to the main roster and they get misused. And so in that respect, that hasn't changed. I am still as concerned and worried now as a fan as I was weeks ago. That hasn't changed. Until I see how all of this shakes out, I will continue to have those concerns.